Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Now, a little while ago we cut these little stones here, well actually they're quite big. We cut these for Julian Stavrius over at Opal Empire and Jewelry. This one in particular is an absolute cracking stone. These two well and truly deserve to be in one of my protective cases. So if you missed those videos, definitely go check them out, especially this one. This one really turned out absolutely wonderful. This one could actually do with a little bit more work, and you can know why if you check out that previous video, but for now they go back into their little protective case because I want to very much make sure that they are never harmed. And instead what we're going to do is we're going to look at these. So for doing that cutting, Julian gave me a few little morsels here. So these ones I won't really work on too much. They're two little gastropods being little snail fossils, opalized fossils of course. He knows that I've been on the hunt for a snail, and these two are partial snails, and one day I'm hoping to get a museum grade proper snail, kind of like the one at SA Museum, but I'm going to have to fork out the big dollars for a piece like that, which I'm willing to do if it's the right one, so I'm going to keep my eyes open. But this one here, this is a pretty beat up shell. Now if I flip it over, you can see here it's got quite a lot of colour in it, just under the surface. When it starts peeking through like this, it is a very good sign that there is some precious material in there. Of course there's a bit of sand and it is pretty shattered, which is a good and a bad thing. If this was fully intact, there is no way I would do what I'm about to do, but because it's all bashed apart and missing chunks and got sand inclusions here, there and everywhere, and the shell features aren't that prominent, I'm actually going to carve this like you wouldn't believe. I'm just going to attack anything I don't like the look of and just see what we end up, see what nature's left us. Now if I get a torch in behind it, it does highlight, it doesn't come up on camera quite so well, but it does highlight a lot of areas where there's little bits of sand, but you know what, they all look pretty close to the surface from both sides. And that being the case, I am pretty confident that we can just carve away until we're left with nothing but opal, and if that works out, we'll have a really weird shape, but we'll have plenty of colour and we can give it a really nice polish and just end up with a very interesting chunk of opal. But only one way to find out. Let's spin up and start drilling this poor little guy. So the colour was almost exposed already in a lot of areas, so I'm going to start off with the 600 grit sintered diamond, and this cut in particular is going to be a lot of exceptions. A lot of the things that I normally say, we're going to do the exact opposite. Here we're just very carefully removing everything. This is pretty normal. I'm sweeping across. But then we start to go dentist mode. We are going to drill and primarily focus on any of those little sandy inclusions or rusty spot inclusions. And normally I say you don't do this, you want to keep nice broad strokes. But here we're going to drill all of this out and then try to fix it up afterwards. So you can see here, just purely drilling down. I'm not using the point, but I am drilling very focused, and then we're going to end up kind of like this. We're going to end up with all these really sharp pockets, and this is where, a bit backwards, but we're going to now try to fix this weird pointy angular shape. We want to start curving a lot of edges, we want to fix a lot of the profile, and we want to get nice even kind of curves rather than huge dips and dives. So that's what it's going to look like at this point. Really, I've just removed all the inclusions, but now we're going to start fixing it up, starting off with the edge. Need to get a nice square setting edge just in case I find a way to be able to set this stone as is. Though, as you'll see later, we may modify that idea, change the approach a little bit, and instead of bezel setting this, we might even slice it up into two stones. But for now, I was planning on being able to set this somehow. So a lot of these little dips and dives, we've got to even them out, because in this case, I say fix the cavities, but we can't fill it. So no fillers, we can only remove more material, and we're just going to remove material to get rid of any of those peaks and just try to get everything nice and curvy. You can see here along that silhouette, there's a little bit of an up and down. Like a roller coaster, I like to think of my roller coaster rides as being those really swooping fast ones. I don't like the ones that have a million twists and turns and yank your neck around. I just want to have a nice little slope and go real fast across it. So that's what I'm trying to do here. Just get rid of all of these little bumps. And you'll see every time I work on one of these bumps, I'm flipping the stone and then working it on both sides. It's good to have a perspective of both sides, especially on a stone that's going to be double-sided. Here you can see two peaks next to each other, super easy fix. We're just going to grind it back down into that valley, make sure there's no valley. And then we'll just go across the corners because I'm grinding pretty square here. So you can see the edges look a little bit weird. We'll flip it over, make sure the valley's gone on both sides and in the middle. And then we're just going to round off those outer edges. And you'll see here it disappears super quick with the 600. You really don't need anything else. Once you can see color, it's 600 grits into diamonds for sure. So tidy that up, and then what we have to do is go back and check all our work. So under a loop, under magnification, with a torch, all that kind of stuff. Use whatever cheat codes you've got, and just grab a Sharpie and draw up any of the areas you don't like. I'll focus on the dips because they are the biggest problem all the time. So you can see here I'm working on it. And eventually we'll see that there are some really tough areas to get to. You can see that texture right in there is not disappearing easily. I don't mind using the point on this carving because I'm going to use the Nova points, which also have a fairly fine point. We need to make sure they can reach, so we can't make it too sharp. We can't just jab the point in. We do have to do a little bit of this sweeping motion, and here I'm trying to keep those nice gentle curves. So even though you're trying to remove more of these little pits and stuff, you've still got to be pretty sensible about it. And you can see there's some really deep little black spots that aren't releasing that marker. If we zoom right in, there you go. So they're all the things that I saw under the loop, and we've got to get rid of them. They can't stay. It's too ugly to stick around, and we've got plenty of crystal material behind it. Beautiful color. We're not running out of color bar, so we got to get rid of it. There's no choice or question about it. And you can see there, it's really not that hard, but it does take that extra step of really focusing on it. And then you can get rid of them all, make sure they're all gone before you move to the 280, and then the 280 doesn't have to do much more work. So Nova points, 280, 600, 1200. I skipped the 3000 on this one. You don't always have to use it. A lot of the time you can get a really good polish anyway. So the cerium oxide will fix it up from the 1200 point. I do tend to use the 3000, but on this one I just decided not to. I just wanted to see how it would go, just going cerium oxide. I would say though, with the cerium oxide, because it's not so abrasive, it is a little bit more reliant on having a really good finish before getting to that point. Like the pre-polish really has to be there. Whereas if you're going to use aluminium oxide or diamond paste, you can get away with falling short in a lot of areas, and you can actually fix it up because they are quite hard and abrasive. Aluminium oxide having a hardness of 9 and diamonds being up there at the 10. Cerium oxide is down there at like the 6. So it's very soft, and you're relying on that chemical polishing, which we've covered in other videos. Feel free to search on the channel and you'll be able to find them, comparing all three of those options and telling you which one's the best. But in this case, cerium oxide, pure opal, works wonders. Let's have a look at what happened. Well, would you look at this? So I've just kept it underwater just to magnify the look of the opal, but it has been cut and polished. We'll keep it in here just for looking at the color patterns because it is a absolute disco party. It's also good to have the dark background of my water container because it is a fairly crystal piece. As you can see, if I pass my finger behind it, you can see the entire thing going straight through. So it's very clean, very crystal, which meant that I had to work really hard on getting all of those little imperfections out of it. Luckily, for some reason, this shell didn't have sand in the core, which is very good. Of course, I say shell, but it is no longer a shell. It always annoys me a little bit when someone has a piece like this and calls it a shell. It is no longer a shell. It is now just a straight crystal opal carving. And an annoying one at that, because the undulation on this one is quite big. If I bring it up and out and we let the light play over it, you'll see how the light breaks up into lots of little parts. That just goes to show you how undulating this piece is. Here there's a divot in there. Basically, I operated like a dentist and drilled out all of the little things that I didn't like, any pits, any sand. Mostly it was sand. Thank the Lord there were no cracks, and we ended up with this. Now I will mention that I don't like these little narrow parts here. So there is a chance, and I'm torn because I want to be able to set really unusual shaped pieces like this as well. But I am very torn in drawing a straight line from here all the way up here and basically clipping all of that off and making a pretty solid and thick, really high dome stone just here. And then the rest of this I can use as inlay or make a doublet out of it. It's pretty thick in sections, so I can actually make another small little companion stone there and then maybe join the two back together for a piece of jewelry. I feel like that's probably pretty poetic. But the best thing about carving is I can always cut it further, whereas if I'd already carved it all away, it would be dust. Now if I move this out of the way now that we've had a look at the pattern, emphasize the crystal, very obviously crystal, and yeah, any little sand spot that was in it, you could see front and back. The sand spot on the front here at the highest point, you could still see it through the back here. That is the biggest problem with crystal. But the best thing about crystal is have a look at that brightness. Absolutely insane. For a bashed up shell, this came out really well. I like the back, I like the front, I like everything about this one. I will warn people though that things like this take a long time. If you just want to cab a stone, believe it or not, it is 10 times faster than doing something like this. Every single little dip, every little channel like this one here, even the odd shape and getting right into these little narrow spots and deep edges, all of that takes an immense amount of time compared to just doming an oval. It is a lot faster, just whip your stencil out and go like that, but this is one of the things that you can do with a Dremel. And honestly, once you get the hang of it, it is a lot of fun. A stone like this, you can spend hours on. I personally, for this one, have spent about 2.5 hours in total, but I am doing all this recording and all that kind of stuff, which adds time. You can definitely get it done a lot faster, but it does take time no matter what you're doing and how you do it. But yeah, that's the stone. I've just chucked it back in the water to play with the color pattern again. There's some little lines over here, some little kitty cat patterns, kitty cat claws. Not quite Wolverine because they're pretty small. And I was really excited. My favorite pattern is Jigsaw, and in the rough I thought I could see some Jigsaw poking through, but unfortunately not quite. It tries a little bit here and there. Oh, technically there's a couple Jigsaws in there, but it's not the prime Jigsaw that I'm always after. But you know what? I can always complain about a stone not being perfect, and this is no exception, but it is a nice stone. How I'm going to set it, have no idea. Well, I've kind of got some idea. I have given it a pretty square edge where I could, but it is going to take a very fancy wrap to get around this one. I'm just checking out my little setting edge. It does wobble up a little bit just over here. Another reason to maybe trim that one off. I could definitely set the rest. It's just this weird little wing that sticks out there. But you'll be sure to see this one again. So I'll just chuck it in one of my little protective cases. I do indeed. So he'll go in here and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you guys.